on January the 11th for our January 11th OBX wave report. We had some activities going on in the morning time, so we've had to move our OBX wave report to the evening, which is no big deal because we get to look at this beautiful geo cover image, geocolor image provided by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration as the sun sets here in the Outer Banks and we begin to see night, the veil of night drawn across the face of the Earth um, as some high clouds swirl on above, and we have various storm systems out west visible in the satellite shot. And one of the beautiful things about this geocolor image is that you can see both the clouds and the lights from the cities across the United States just twinkling to life as night progresses. One of the wonderful things about the Outer Banks here is there's just not a lot of light, and because there's less light in a cityscape type of environment, we can see the stars quite a bit more here, and the skies are very clear, and you can see depth. It's almost like being in the middle of the ocean, because in a way we are. We're thrust out into the ocean here in the Outer Banks. And for today, what we're going to talk about are we've been doing special reports on California and Ireland. We're not going to do any special reports today on either California or Ireland, but those are definitely both wave and extreme weather and climate links to extreme weather hotspots right now. And on the Outer Banks Wave Report, we talk all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. So when there's some hot spots going off, particularly in our local region here in the lower 48 or out in the North Atlantic. We're going to talk to you guys about it. So that's what we've been doing. We'll talk a little bit about that today in the OBX wave report, also as we talk about wave conditions for the Outer Banks. And for the Outer Banks right now, wave conditions are relatively small. We've got 0 to 2 foot waves across the Outer Banks with light winds prevailing primarily out of the east. Very light though, in the range of like about 3 to 5 miles per hour. Temperatures today across most of the Outer Banks got up into the lower 50s and expected to be warmer tomorrow, with temperatures getting up into the 60s. I've seen some reports of potential temperatures in the 70s for tomorrow, so very warm day tomorrow out ahead of a weather system out here in the central US. You can see this swirl of weather, and that's supposed to sweep in on Friday and Saturday and give us some increasingly stormy conditions, but these stormy conditions are also predicted to kick up the waves a bit. So we've got a return of bigger waves by Friday, and these bigger waves in the range of like 2 to 5 feet right now is basically what I'm seeing in the models. We'll see how that progresses, if there are any changes, but in any case, larger waves expected by Friday, and these larger waves are expected to persist throughout the next 5 to 7 days as we get more storminess just generally offshore in the Atlantic and possibly more storminess here on the Outer Banks. Some of the models are showing possible coastal lows or near coastal lows, but we'll see what happens as we get into the day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. At the very least, we're going to see a front come through and maybe some lows developing off the coast. We'll just have to wait and see. Looking at the infrared satellite shot, we do see that swirl of stormy weather in the central US that is heading off toward our region tomorrow. Out ahead of it, we're going to get that warmer impulse of air with those southerly winds and just much warmer conditions, and warmer than normal conditions in the 60s to, well, lower 60s to possibly 70s for some locations on the Outer Banks. And then by Friday, this area of stormy weather is expected to produce a pretty stormy frontal type system across the East Coast. And then following that, we get the storms translating out into the Atlantic and possibly lingering offshore to help provide the Outer Banks with some higher surf conditions. I do want to point out the continued atmospheric river type situation for California. It is worth noting that though California continues to get some pretty heavy storms, the longer term models are starting to look more favorable for California. And so we might see a respite for California. I hope so. They have had a lot of severe weather impacts, emergencies, and threats to life and limb out there in California. So it would be nice to see things start to moderate and tamp down a bit. Looking at the near coastal waters, I do want to show you the wave models. And I did mention that up and down the Outer Banks, waves are in the range of about 0 to 2 feet. In the near offshore regions, we've got 2 foot, looks like mostly 2 foot waves coming in from the southeast across the Outer Banks. And some of those are translating to shore in certain locations, some of them are not. Looking at our specific locations for the OBX wave report today, we're going to start out as we usually do at Jeanette's Pier using our Google Maps for informational purposes. Go ahead and check out Google Maps. Fantastic tool. And we're going to look at Jeanette's Pier. Right now, we did get a dawn patrol observation at Jeanette's Pier, and the waves there at the time were pretty small, 1 to maybe 2 feet at the time, but they were already trending small earlier today. And right now, wave conditions at Jeanette's Pier, according to wave reports, are 1 foot. And the primary swell with those 1 foot waves is coming in at 10 seconds, with a secondary swell coming in at 15 seconds. Winds are out of the east at 5 miles per hour, which is an onshore flow. Air temperature is 51 degrees, and that was about the high today. Those should be dropping off pretty quick as the sun sets. And ocean water temperature at 52 degrees, pretty chilly out there. Make sure you got your wetsuit if you're gonna go surf 1 foot waves. Who knows? Weather conditions, we did have a high today of 51, partly cloudy conditions, and tomorrow expected to be warmer. Moving down the beach to Road Anthony, we're going to go on past Oregon Inlet and head on down past the Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge to the Road Anthony Pier and see if I can. Can I find the Road Anthony Pier? Maybe not. Okay, we're just going to go to the Road Anthony Beach access, and this is funny. I can't find the pier, but yeah, we'll just go to the Road Anthony Beach access. It's probably just, it's about to bite me. I've done all the things today, so like my brain is kind of a muddle. So excuse me for not finding the pier on the satellite image. But in any case, at Road Anthony, the waves are 1 to 2 foot, so a bit higher than they are up the coast. We've got some regions up the coast where waves are like 0 to 1 feet, so it's pretty small up here. But down in Rodanthe, the waves are at least 1 to 2 foot, with a primary swell coming in at 10 seconds here in the evening time, and a secondary swell coming in at 12 seconds. Winds are out of the northeast at 5 miles per hour, which is an onshore flow there at Rodanthe. Air temperatures 54 degrees, that's a beach reading, and the ocean water temperature is 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Warmer waters, although not as warm as they have been. So warmer than Jeanette's Pier, but the water temperatures are still dropping off as we get into January, as you would expect. So please get your cold wet water gear if you're planning on surfing tomorrow morning, or I don't know, surfing in the evening is not necessarily advisable. You don't want to surf in low light conditions. That's just not good for interactions with wildlife, particularly sharks. In any case, the weather conditions for today, the predicted high for Road Anthony was 52 degrees. Right now we're getting beach observations in the range of 54, so lower to middle 50s as the high today. Partly cloudy conditions, and as with most locations across the Outer Banks, warmer tomorrow. Heading on down south, I'm going to take you guys to Billy Mitchell Airport, where we have our big wave spot for the Outer Banks today, and not really big. Big wave being a Just it's the biggest waves we have right now in the Outer Banks, and they are right now 2 feet according to wave observations at the coastline there at the Billy Mitchell Airport. So 2 foot waves, nothing really to write home about, but rideable, right? Those 2 foot waves are coming in at a primary swell period of 10 seconds, with a secondary swell coming in at 14 seconds. Winds are out the east northeast at 5 miles per hour, which is a cross shore flow because the beach there at Billy Mitchell does face to the south. Air temperatures right now are 52 degrees with ocean water temperatures at 61. Even the south facing beaches now getting into the lower 60s. Water temperatures cooling off into February. You need those wetsuits, guys. You're gonna need them. Gonna definitely want them in those cool air and cold air and cold water conditions. Weather conditions for Billy Mitchell. There was a high temperature today of 54 degrees, according to the National Weather Service, and conditions are partly cloudy. Expected high today in the expected high tomorrow in the mid to upper 60s. Warmer conditions coming in tomorrow ahead of that front, all up and down the Outer Banks. Some of these predicted temperatures are probably going to be overshot. I've heard local reports expecting temperatures in the 70s. I know I keep talking about it, but it's going to be a nice warm day tomorrow, so enjoy it, guys. All right. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about some model forecasts. I'm going to just go ahead and run this model and tell you what we see. Okay, whoa, that moved fast. Let's roll it back. Okay, right now we've got a low pressure center in the center of the country in the range of about 1,000 millibars, and it's expected to gather steam as it enters the Mississippi River and Ohio River Valley region of the eastern United States, and then sweeps in across the Appalachians with a pretty strong frontal system trailing behind it into the mid-Atlantic, likely bringing stormy conditions by Friday, and then sweeping off the coast later in the day on Friday. And then we see the front heading on offshore and a bit of a bite forming in this front where we get some northerly and northeasterly winds. And that is what we are looking at for potentially pumping up the surf across the Outer Banks from Friday into Saturday. First, as stronger winds come in from the south, and then as these little lows form along a frontal boundary and pull in winds from the north and northeast. For the US West, we still have a succession of systems coming in, but hopefully these things will be starting to taper off. Some of the longer term models indicate that they may. And I do want to also show you guys the North Atlantic. I'm going to slow this down and back it up. So we do see the storm system forming in the eastern half of the US and then sweeping off toward the coast by Friday. It's worth noting that windy conditions and near gale force conditions do prevail for Ireland, which has also been a big wave spot for the North Atlantic recently. But as with the West Coast, it does look like the storminess for Ireland may start to taper off. And we'll go ahead and advance these models. We do see a storm running into Ireland by Friday. Nothing too crazy. Looks like in the 980 millibar range, but still a gale. And another gale sweeping in. And then then the pattern shifts. We get this high pressure system, very strong high pressure system building in through the central North Atlantic. One of the things that it does is it blocks up storms here off the US East Coast, which helps to keep the waves good for the Outer Banks. Yay. So we get a bit of a wave maker here in the offshore as a high seems to want to block systems off the US East Coast and keep them from moving north and east. And then for Ireland, as this ridge in the North Atlantic expands, it does seem that the storm systems may tend to tamp down a little bit, but you do get this. I don't know. I might have to moderate that statement because look at these isobars. They are kind of pretty tightly packed, and particularly here in the central North Atlantic, which may indicate some very strong wind speeds out there. And they're not. I mean, they're relatively tightly packed up here in Ireland. So rather than getting a succession of storms, we're just seeing this general strong wind pattern with a moisture. I don't know, like a flow of moisture just riding up over top of this high, which is an interesting pattern and aimed pretty much directly at Ireland. Look at these isobars and their tightness here off France and northern Spain. That actually might be something to look at for waves for Europe. Off the US East Coast, I did mention how storms look like they might start to get bottled up here, and we do have a storm east of Bermuda, and this thing would likely be churning out surf for the Outer Banks and the US East Coast by the time we get into the 16th. And just watch how this high just looks like it's really starting to elongate here, and you get these isobars on either side of the high just really packed tightly. So you've got some tight isobars to the west of the high and tight isobars to the east, which means pretty strong winds coming in from the south on the back side of the high and from the north on the front side of the high. And then this storm system that has just been stuck out here, can't really go anywhere, is getting bottled up by this high pressure system, and it keeps getting a little stronger. So I think, we might get a nice, strong prevailing swell out here in the Outer Banks, something to look forward to as we get into Tuesday. And then the blocking high continues to do its blockage into Wednesday as the storm just churns on. Nothing really major, not an extraordinarily powerful storm, but a 980s system is nothing to shake a stick at. We do have another storm coming in here to the north of Scotland with a prevailing, looks like northwesterly flow off the top edge of that high. I don't know. Maybe Ireland's going to see. Yeah, then the storm backs up. Okay, maybe stormy conditions do not taper off for Ireland, although we don't really see any crazy bomb cyclones in this model. The main feature, in my opinion, or the main features are the blocking high, the storms getting bottled up off the US East Coast, and these really tightly packed isobars around a rather strong high pressure system. Yeah. So finally, the high seems to weaken toward the end of the model, and it lets the storm loose off the US East Coast. And then we have, at the end of the model, another major storm system sweeping through the US East as the high backs up to Europe. And getting to the end of the model here, we have storms starting to progress again across the Atlantic as the high seems to be fading. So a blocking high, a storm getting balled up west of the high, and hopefully being a wave maker for the Outer Banks. I would say that conditions for Ireland do seem to taper off a little bit as far as the gales and the waves, but it still seems that Ireland's going to get some very strong prevailing winds off the North Atlantic. So we'll still be looking at Ireland as potential big wave spot over the coming week as well, although not likely as quite as big as we've seen the 25 to 30 foot or more significant wave heights off of Ireland, which is just pretty crazy. Looking at the longer range outlooks for the United States, these are interesting features. We see above normal temperatures to well above normal temperatures for the Outer Banks and areas of the U.S. Northeast, while below normal temperatures start to prevail across the U.S. West, particularly into the Southwest. And then looking at precipitation, look at this 8 to 14 day outlook. This is very interesting and possibly hopeful for California. Hopefully these models will bear out, but in the analysis by the Climate Prediction Center, California is supposed to shift to a drier pattern, which would bring relief from the powerful storms that they've been seeing recently. As more stormy conditions start to shift to the US East Coast, although we don't really have much in the way of major hotspots for the US East Coast, maybe the Northeast, which is looking a little bit stormier. And then we have generally more tendency for storms across the upper tier of the central US as well. And I did want to talk a little bit about California and note some 24-hour precipitation totals. Yesterday we had some pretty crazy 24-hour precipitation totals. Today it's still relatively intense in some locations in the range of 1 to 3 inches, looks like, with the hotspot being around 2.9 inches in this map, but not as intense as it was yesterday, which is a good thing. And then right now, California is experiencing definitely a lot of precipitation coming in off the Pacific. But note that the Los Angeles area is mostly clear of precipitation, and that precipitation is focusing more to the northern regions of California as these heavier bands move in off the Pacific. And I just want to show you these alerts. Looks like we've got some, oh, there's a storm warning off the northern coast of California here, so very likely very large waves there and very strong winds. And then looks like gales are still prevailing off the central coast, the northern and central coasts. And yeah, it looks like the gales just head on down to central California, and then further down south, we've got small craft advisories. Very stormy conditions offshore, rains tapering off a little bit today, but and focusing more on the north and central, but still very, very stormy there in California. Although worth noting that the mountain regions aren't getting hit as hard either. Um, I'm going to look at waves in a second. I do want to talk about the NOAA QPF, the quantitative prediction for precipitation. And we do see that Northern California is and Central California, particularly the mountains, are expected to see some heavy precipitation totals over the next 7 days in the range of 3 to 15 inches. So in this 5 to 7 day time frame, it doesn't really seem like precipitation is tapering off that much. But for the longer range models, there does appear to be some hope for California. We'll keep our fingers crossed for California and hope that these atmospheric river type systems take a break because they have been quite intense. All the precipitation has come like all at once. It's just all the precipitation all at once, and then all the drought all at once, which climate scientists warned us about that for California. You can't deny it. It happened. You listen to the climate scientists. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it now, and we're seeing it with 1.2, 1.3 degrees Celsius temperature departures from the late 1880s timeframe. Um, yeah, so we're seeing impacts now. Of course, they're not as intense as they would tend to be if the temperature keeps going up globally. You don't want that to happen, so you want to stop the fossil fuel burning and get those clean energy systems really going at full charge because that's how you beat back the climate crisis. Ask California. In any case, let's talk waves. Let's do the last roundup here. I'm going to talk waves in the Outer Banks because this is the OBX wave report. So what we're going to do is we're going to end with waves in the Outer Banks, but we will start with the big wave hotspots for our region of the Northern Hemisphere, and we are going to start with California with those storm conditions off the US West Coast. And the significant wave heights are coming in at California in the range of about 14 feet. And those are expected to pump up pretty quick in the range of 20-foot significant wave heights over the next day or so. Now, I actually want to roll this back and get a kind of hour by hour. Yeah, so you get some significant wave heights off of Northern California here in the 22 maybe 25-foot range. And then this next impulse rolls in across the coast of California, starting to get into central California with significant wave heights in the near offshore environment in the range of 19 feet. And then rolling in to more southerly locations with significant wave heights off Los Angeles in the range of 6 to 16 feet-ish. I guess 4 as you get even further south. But In any case, more big surf heading in toward California. Again, significant wave heights do not capture the highest waves. They are the top 70% of waves. So you can have waves that are up to twice the size of the significant wave. All right, let's go off here to the east to Ireland, which has been a hang 10 big wave spot for the Emerald Isle. And right now, we definitely have a hang 10 big wave kind of experience going on at Ireland. Not quite as crazy as some of the big wave events that we've seen for Ireland recently, but nonetheless, significant wave heights are in the range of 20 feet to 28 feet in this model, which is no joke, which is a seriously end of the wave rainbow stuff, guys. I mean, it's the Emerald Isle um, is definitely competing for a big wave crown right now, and nobody is talking about it, or very few people are talking about it. I'm going to advance the models to tomorrow when we are predicted to see some crazy waves for Ireland as part of a yet another gale that is sweeping in toward the Irish coast. And significant wave heights off the Irish coast are predicted to range from around 29 to 30 to even like close to 35 feet here off the, ooh, that was like a 39-foot significant wave height right off the coast of Ireland, maybe about 20 miles out, 20 to 30 miles out there. But even so, really, really, really big waves predicted for Ireland tomorrow in the wave analysis and the wave models as another gale. I'll just show you the gale force conditions. It is not 91 miles per hour, so but still very strong winds, nearly 60-mile-per-hour sustained winds expected as another gale sweeps into Ireland tomorrow. Now let's go down to the Outer Banks, and we are going to finish up our wave report with our final observations here at the Outer Banks, where we love the Outer Banks and we love doing wave reports. And we're going to go back to the ocean because we love the ocean. And yes, so right now, as we started off, we're going to end. We started off with some significant wave heights in the range of 2 feet. And let's go ahead and advance this model and see what happens as a front tomorrow begins to sweep in and we get those southwesterly winds, which kick up a nice southwesterly or southerly swell in the range of about 4.5 to 5 feet off the southern beaches, significant wave heights. And then for Friday, we get a much stronger impulse in the near offshore environment with significant wave heights remaining from the swell remaining from the south and significant wave heights maintaining from about 4.5 to 5.5 feet in the near coastal waters. Some periods of time actually might see higher surf. I'm just going to back this up a couple hours so you can see that earlier on Friday we might get something in the range of 8 to 9 foot significant wave heights off the southern beaches, so worth noting. Let's go ahead and move this forward. And then for the following day, we get a bit of a swirl in the atmosphere, which whips the winds around to the north. And I'm just going to confirm this in the air model. See, so you get this little kink in this front here, and it's whipping the winds around to the northwest behind this front. And that is going to pump up the waves off the north-facing beaches to the range of about 6 to 7 feet, while the south-facing beaches start to see waves drop off. And then the following day, we get more of that northeasterly influence, it looks like. Let's just switch the air models. Okay, I guess more northerly, still some northwest component, but wow, look at that. That's an interesting trough there. That's a really interesting front. Yeah, that's interesting. You got this deep line of calm air in the middle of this frontal system. But in any case, winds coming out of the north and northwest across the Atlantic, kicking up some waves, getting back to the ocean surface, waves in the range of 6 feet in the near coastal waters. And then I believe nope, we don't have one more day. So I'm going to advance the model so you can see this northerly swell as it see this northerly and north, the swell coming in from the north and northeast as it progresses in the range of about 5 to 6 feet off the outer banks. And I might have 1 or 2 more hours. It does tamp down a little bit as the storm system appears to sink off to the east a little bit here. But nonetheless, we've got a wave maker out there. You can see the swirl in the waves and likely a swirl in the air there. No, maybe not. Interesting. Okay, well, but you do have that frontal system out there that is bringing in those northerly winds. And oh, yep, there is a swirl a bit to the east. You see this? So you do start to get like low pressure nodes in this frontal boundary, and it looks like there's one forming right here. And so you got this swirl in the air, and the waves are coming in off the North Atlantic from the northeast in a long-term swell here. And that kind of swell is likely to persist for at least a few days as this frontal storm and its associated low pressure systems get bottled up. So better waves here for the Outer Banks, nothing as crazy as what's happening right now on the US West Coast or in Ireland. Those are like the crazy big wave spots. Ireland particularly with significant waves predicted in the range of like 28 to 37, maybe even 38 feet in the near coastal waters. Watch out. And I would be very interested to see some footage out there in Ireland because man, is it pumping up. Here in the Outer Banks, we're going to see a little bit of a pump up too with it looks like 3 to 5 foot surf for the beaches for a period from Friday through the middle of next week. We'll see. We'll see if it happens. But right now, looks pretty favorable. In any case, thank you for joining me for the OBX Wave Report today on this January 11th. And please remember to do everything you can to help accelerate the transition to clean energy and thereby defend our beautiful coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning. Thank you again, and I'll be chatting with you shortly.